Something we're going to talk about on Wednesday is impermanence. This idea that nothing lasts, or this too shall pass. It doesn't seem at first glance, at least for me, like, wow, this is extremely important. There's a lot to gather from this. I don't know. It seems almost so common sense that there's not much to really get deep into, but there really is. I mean, if you look at these spiritual traditions like Buddhism, for example, impermanence it's like Buddhism 101. It's just a central thing. It's so much in Stoicism and other traditions, but it's just this eternal truth. And there's different levels of understanding. Like, we have to assume that there are people that understand this at a deeper level and understand things that maybe we don't know. Um, but I think about looking at it as in the way of the self. How does this influence this particular perspective? How I see myself and maybe how I navigate my particular path? How does this influence how I see others? And then third, how does this influence how I see the world and how I make sense of things? So with any of these, and I mean, you could do that same particular 3 points of view on virtues, courage. I mean, you just name it. It applies. But how can you look at something and then maybe shift and look at it in another way from another perspective, zoom out maybe and look at the world? So, um, long story short, I think it's helpful to maybe sit with some of these ideas beyond, the initial first glance and think about it in a deeper way.
Yeah, and you've done a lot of contemplation on impermanence, and I think I've valued from your wisdom on that for sure through our discussions. But one of the things that kind of like disheartening for me is I heard someone say this on a podcast. I don't even think it was a philosophy podcast, but it was some conversation between two people, and they were talking about, I think, standing up when you work or something like that. Like, you have standing. I have a standing desk. I love standing up for work. Um, and he said, "Well, sometimes it's more comfortable to sit down." But what he said that I was like, "Oh shit, that sucks that that's true." Is no matter how comfortable you get, it's going to be uncomfortable soon.
Yeah.
So you can get in your most comfortable lazy boy and get the pillow behind your neck just right. Support your back and get the TV going, and you're going to be uncomfortable in like 20 minutes. And I think that's really on the practical level that really made me understand impermanence. It's like no matter how strong you get, no matter how comfortable you are right now, no matter how you feel right now, good or bad,
Yeah.
it's going to change. And it doesn't matter if it's good right now. Like, again, I'm comfortable right now. That doesn't mean it's still gonna be like that for me in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes. So I think that's a thing that we often I agree with you, we overlook all the time.
And it's interesting because it applies to both sides of it. Some sort of pleasurable, beautiful experience. I have young kids. This nice experience with one of my kids. This too shall pass. Like some sort of frustrating, annoying, thing that might bring about a little bit of anger. It won't last. It will pass, so it's like everything. And you think of so many of these practices, memento mori, many others, they're really about helping us to see the truth. It's not some sort of magic pixie dust or anything like that. It's just helping us to see reality a bit clearer because it's just the truth. This too shall pass. But we totally, yeah, we miss it. We so easily forget some of these things. And some of these eternal truths, they're not always the most inspiring.
Mhm.
You know, I
Yeah.
heard in a recent podcast I was listening to yesterday, The Daily Stoic with Ryan Holiday and Mark Manson. They were talking about The Secret, the book,
Yeah.
just this ginormous, like best-selling, book, and it's enjoyable to read. They were talking about how it's enjoyable to think that, but it's not how the world works. It's just simply, you know, um, and they're doing a bit of another thing of pointing to these eternal truths, which I think can be inspiring. It can have this good feeling to see what is true, but at first it might not be, as inspiring as something else.